Or do you, it's up to you. Okay. Okay, next up would be Surin. The note that I have, do I have a note for you? I do not. I remember you were talking about the Olaf having to manually move the inside outside. Would you prefer to look at the Olaf bottle or your main one? Let's look at the Olaf one, okay. Yeah, okay, so looking at the master sketch here, so this is what we talked about was dimensioning, or she had mentioned this during the review, dimensioning to this outside line. Is that tied to this dimension here? So let's see what happens if we change this. Ideally, if we bump this out. Yeah, that's perfect. That's exactly what you want to happen. Now, I know I didn't formally teach splines to everybody. Some of you that emailed me with questions, sometimes a spline was a better solution, so I suggested it as a solution. Splines are a little bit more flexible in growing and shrinking. They're not ideal in that sometimes they're harder to like define from like a manufacturing standpoint, but they're definitely doable. So yeah, some of you who emailed me, I did recommend splines. Now you said the issue was when you made the bottle taller or shorter, is that right? I see. So that changed. So then you had to do these manually. That's, I do not have a magic bullet that's better than what you have here, to be honest. The closest thing I could think would be, yeah, unfortunately, something like this ends up being manual. So like, if this is 12, then this becomes like, yeah, you know, it is, unfortunately, it's part of it. There's not always a set rule. Now, seeing this one jump down, like, for example, it might, I noticed then you have to change this one as well, and this one. Let's see what happens when this one moves. So here's one thing, for example, you could have done. This is like the only thing I can offer, is instead of these two here, so let's say you have, and this is maybe again where sometimes it may be better than an arc is better than a spline. So I'm going to try and just recreate this roughly on the left here, or the right side here, is if you have an arc and you set this to be in the middle. Now I realize like this is not the same as what you have here. Whoops. Why is that collapsing? Instead of dimensioning this 0.9 and the 2.2, if you set a line between here, this is what I'm trying to create on the side and struggling with, and set this to be in the middle, and align this point to that point. Now, as this grows, this will always be kept centered on it. So that's like that's really the only automated thing you can have proportionally, or one of the easier ones is equal length or centering things on something. So that's what I was trying to show here is like, that way, if this grows, this height grows, this bump on the arc will always be in the center of something. But based on what I have, what I see you have set up here, this is not uncommon. Sometimes you do have to manually set the height differently. Cool. Any questions on this? Anybody? Okay. Moving on. Next up, we have Armando. Do you want to look at the lightsaber or the Gatorade bottle? All right. Yeah, let's look at it. Let's look at it. Okay. Just the main size, big bottle. Here's the original. So let's see, what note do I have? Do I have a note for you? I don't think I do. Oh, the height. Yeah, you were having trouble changing the height. So let's look at your master sketch. So when this got smaller is when you had an issue, or taller, or both? So let's check bigger first since that's easier. Yeah, that's great. I would say there's nothing wrong with what happened just now. I mean, it's similar to Surin's in that, let's say we make it 11. I see. Okay, now there's an issue that popped up here. Let's look at what's going on with that. Like, one thing, I think I mentioned this to some of you, it might have been like based on one-on-one questions. So, okay, I'm gonna change this to 11. Something's gonna bubble out here. Let's look what happens. If we zoom in, it looks like it's this inside arc that's hurting on us. And I can see now where this issue is. Okay, so here we have stacked dimensions. This one, and this one, and this one, and this. These are all constraining this point to the top. So when this grows, this doesn't move, it looks like to me, unless I'm mistaken. Oh, and this one too. Oh, no, sorry, no, because this is the origin. Let's look at this again. 10. Yeah, do you see that, Armando? You have, or I guess does the class see that too? These 1, 2, 3, 4 dimensions are holding this point to the origin. And this point is the bottom of this. Now it looks like when this grows, these can all still shift down, and that's when it kind of inverts this arc and flips it. Again, it's because of this, whoops. It's this point that's causing you the problem right here. So if you were to, for example, delete this, sometimes it's helpful, like because this is so close to the bottom, it would be more helpful to dimension this to the bottom edge, like that. Now this point is no longer constrained to the top. This makes more sense to constrain it to the top because this is the shoulder. So now when we change this to 11, that shouldn't bubble anymore. Oh, it bubbled inwards, but it worked a little bit smoother. Do you see that? Now what happened is these got more narrow. So that tells me that you need to dimension, yeah, Alex is doing the hand motions. You need to dimension this depth here. And that should fix that. So I hate to say it, it's kind of tedious, but part of the game in SolidWorks is changing your dimension and seeing what changes and then constraining it. And that way now we have a bottle that grew taller without as many issues. I'm going to assume that growing smaller was related to that point being fixed because it was stacked. So now let's do a jump to 8. Yeah, it works better. It was because you had those stacked dimensions. They were fighting each other. Is that clear to everybody? To some level? No. Any questions on it? Yeah, Armando.
I feel like the main problem I have is I don't know where to start. Like, I guess we need to know how the bottle works and what parts should stay constant. Like, I just want to know how construction works.
Like how to approach the construction.
Because like
yeah.
It was mostly like I started dimensioning this because this moved.
Yeah.
I started dimensioning this because this moved. But then I was just like, I feel like it's getting two dimensions. It starts getting overdefined, and I don't know like unnecessary.
Okay, that's a really good question and a fair question. And I probably could have done a better job laying that out for you all. My goal was like to use the can as kind of like an intro. Unfortunately, maybe the can in retrospect may have been too simple. Like it might have been more helpful to make you all do like the Sriracha bottle or a bottle with a bit of a curve. To answer your question as quickly as I can. So I'm going to here's a brand new model. Typically, again, a bottle is dimensioned from the bottom of the transfer ring. This represents the threaded top of like a disposable bottle. These are all typical dimensions up here that I'm not worried about right now. The most simple answer I can give you in this moment is to always start with a bounding box like this and to have the width dimensioned and then the height dimensioned. And then as you work, just tie, and then you can almost even set this whole bounding box. If I go select chain, it'll select everything attached to it. Set it to be for construction, and now build your bottle within this. And as you're building it, change these numbers and see what moves. And that's the best thing I can give you is just to start with that bounding box and build to it. Another way to think about it is just working in sections of the bottle. Work the shoulder, work the base, work the foot. And the foot should probably all be tied to this. The widest part should all probably be tied to this. The shoulder should probably be tied to like these two things. That's the shortest answer I can give you. Does that sort of answer your question? Yeah.
Another question is, when you have overlapping lines, how can I select a line like under or over?
Yeah, that, if I draw another line on here, I think whatever line was drawn second, sometimes you have to select the point. That's one way to do it. Another way, remember, if you drag, I always forget, okay, if you drag left to right, it'll only select anything fully in the box. If you drag right to left, it'll select anything that the box is touching. So that's another way to do it. Yeah, Alex.
This came up right now. How would you move let's say you already drew a line, how would you be able to move a line? Like say you wanted to move it down. Would you quickly move it, or would you have to redraw that line?
So to move this line down, honestly, the simplest thing I hate to say would be to redraw it.
So like even in like a complex thing, like let's say it was like the whole pile of that, or maybe like a certain part of it, but you knew like there was a certain part that you just wanted to be pulled up, so you just have to redraw that.
Okay, it's circumstantial. If you have a whole master sketch, sometimes it is better to move the existing line, especially if there's things already pointing to it. So let's say that is the circumstance. If it's a bigger model, it's a master sketch, you want to move the line and you still want that line to be referenced, and it's just a small move. If it's coincident to something, you want to try and delete those rules. So here it's like coincident to this. That allows you to move it, but you'll notice it's still coincident to this here. Sometimes what I'll do, it can be really hard to select. Well, we can see now. Now, see that deleted the coincident of this other major line. Sometimes it can be hard to select, for example, this coincidence here, because there's a lot of things overlapping. My workaround is I'll simply just trim this out, and then you can move the line. And by trimming it, it still remembers the line. So that's like my workaround.
I did something similar, like I knew like the bottom part of my model, the whole thing was too tall, but I knew like the way I dimensioned it was like exactly how I wanted it. Like these little bits in here.
Yeah.
So I wanted to move it all like to the top. And I realized now I could have done it more easier, but what I did, I just copied the master sketch and I put it in another layer and I moved it up a little bit and I traced it from the like that's how that was like the longer way.
Okay.
I now know looking at this I realized I know how to put it a lot more easier.
Okay. Yeah, however you need to get there. I mean, if I follow with what you did, it's not wrong. You're doing it for reference. That's fine. Yep. Okay, moving on. Next up, we have Angelica. Did you want to look? Let's see. Do I have notes for you? I don't have notes for you. Did you want to look at the Pikachu bottle or the existing bottle? Okay. Let's see here. Type original. All right. Yeah. Sorry, we went a bit over. That's fine. No questions again. Do you have a specific question on the existing bottle you want me to look at, or just in general? Gotcha. Yeah, okay. So the main culprit there is this guy right here. So you're fixing this, and let's see, what's fixing this one? Oh, sorry, no, it's this. This is the culprit, 1.35. So you'll notice here you're changing this. If you get to 2, click away. Come on, computer, there we go. This dimension is constraining this, it's holding it so this arc grows bigger. And then because these are both tangent, yeah, the minute you get to like 3, let's keep going, why not? Oh, that's still working though. It just keeps getting pushed down. I see what you're saying, it's cutting into itself. So this is another instance where, again, when in doubt, and I know this answer sucks. You do kind of just learn this by trial and error and just kind of experience. Dimensioning this to the outside would have been better in this instance. Because now, as this grows, that radius is still going to stay the same. So let's bump this up to 3. Okay, now we have an issue here because this grew. So this is an instance where, let me hit. These traffic lights mean rebuild. Sometimes if you have issues like this, I think this should fix it. Nope, it exited, I'm sorry. And nope, didn't fix it. Okay, this is gonna be hard to talk to with these not on here. Okay. This traffic light should fix it. You put a new dimension in. Okay, nice. Bug workaround. Thank you, SolidWorks. And thank you, Angelica. That suggestion. So okay, so we moved this dimension, right? This used to be dimension to the center. But you'll notice now when I went wider, this moved with it. This is part of the lid here. We don't want that to move, so this should be dimension to here. So now again, when I try and make this jump out at the bottom, I'll change this to 3 again. This is closer to what we want. Again, this is the same issue. This should be dimension to the center. So again, that's how you check these things, Control Z. Simply, it was this one, we'll delete this. Dimension it to the center here. SolidWorks has weird bugs like that. I don't know why those things jump. Does this answer your question, Angelica? Okay. Yeah, it's like if an arc is doing something you don't want it to do, consider like ask yourself, could it be dimensioned to the outside, not to the inside, and how would that change? And then if something's moving to the outside that you don't want to move to the outside, it should probably be dimensioned to the inside, and so on and so forth. The good news is you got this dimension to the outside. That's correct. That all looks good. I mean, you treated these arcs correct. Some nitpick things here, like I would have made these tangent, and maybe like control the angles a little bit. So for example, like let's see if making this tangent now will leave it where it's at. There you go. So by constraining that height, when I made this tangent, that's what snapped it lower. I don't know. So yeah, it's always knowing what to dimension of the inside, what to dimension of the outside. That's like kind of the main takeaway here. Are there any other questions before we move on? Okay. Nice. Next up, we have Jocelyn. Which bottle would you like to look at, Jocelyn? Okay. Oh yeah, the bottom was an issue for you. We've reached my first notes. Existing bottle. Yep, here we go. Is that what you want me to look at, or do you have a specific question for your bottle? Yeah. Oh, this is fine. That's okay to do this as a cut. I see what you're saying now. Let's look at how you built this. I got you. I follow what you're saying now. Okay. All right. Yeah, so what you did is totally fine. That's okay. It's acceptable. So what Jocelyn did is she put her dome in after the fact. Now, for what it's worth, I don't know if you have this in your master. Like, now, because you're doing this cut after the fact, you could have done this as a double. I don't mind the push-up being simplified as you have it. But because you did this as a cut after the fact, like, you could have had that double jump, right? Does that make sense? Now, for what it's worth, let's say that you did have this beforehand. I see now what issue you were having. It is possible, it's a little bit more fussy, but remember that this extrusion, you can tell it where to start from. So in this instance, you can say offset, and you can just plug this, whoops. You can flip it by clicking this, and you can just push it. Oh, come on, SolidWorks. What's going on here? There you go. This is what I'm trying to get it to do. I don't know why this isn't working. Here, let's just keep this blind for now. You can set this offset to happen like after this line so that it's not visible. So it goes here, and then you can say offset from surface. Hopefully this works. Reverse offset. There you go. Reverse the direction. This reverses the direction. This reverses the offset. So now you have it start way on the edge. Does that make sense? Now, your solution is perfectly acceptable, and clearly it's less fussy than what I did. The only argument I would make is, what's going on here?
That was actually going to be my question.
Oh, yeah. This is the issue you had. So yeah, okay, I see an issue here now. Let me just finish this thought real quick, and then I will address what's going on with the error. The only reason why this might be slightly better is because then you could have this cut be part of the initial revolve. But again, your solution's great. It's perfectly acceptable, and again, arguably less fuzzy. So it looks like there's another error here now. And it looks like that the center of this rotation was selected as a face or something. Always for these, whenever you're doing a bottle, if you're doing a detail like this, you just want to select the center line of your master sketch. And that should set you straight for that. Oh, we can get to it with your bottle, Alex. Yeah, I remember you mentioned it. Does that answer all your questions, Jocelyn? Do you want me to look at anything else? Oh, is that what this cut is? Oh, that's cool. Yeah. Okay, I'm glad you brought this up. Yeah, real quick, everyone. Now, this is a standalone sketch. It's not part of the master. That's okay. You can, this is very important to be aware of in SOLIDWORKS, you can dimension one sketch to another sketch. So this sketch is gray. You could, for example, dimension this line. Do you see how that point here highlights orange? You can dimension it to that. And now if that line moves down, this line will move down. And same thing here with the base. I can dimension, again, it would probably be better that this has like a little bit more going on construction lines to keep that, horizontal, so on and so forth. Dimension this to this point down here. Now when the master grows and shrinks, this shape will grow and shrink too. Does that make sense? It's kind of not intuitive because it's like this is a completely different sketch, but you can tie sketches together. And this is again where it's important that that's why the master is important. You can tie things to it. It doesn't have, new sketches don't have to be in the master, but if they point to the master, then if the master changes, the new sketch will also change. Okay, good question. Moving on. Next up, we have Giovanna. Which bottle would you like to look at? Existing one? The cap? Let's do it. That's a good call. This is it. All right. Yeah. Yeah, it's recording. It's going to be a bit of a brutal recording because it's just, there's no pausing and stuff. But okay. Yeah, let's look at the cap. I remember you mentioned you like cut through here and it was cutting through here was part of the issue. Okay. Yeah. Yes. Okay, I see. Let's look at this. Okay. Let's see if I can just do this from the image. Oh, you don't have the cap in here. Okay, for what it's worth, looking at what you have right now, I'll start here. Your approach to building this is totally fine. There's absolutely nothing wrong with this. The only thing that I would maybe say, once again, is tying this to this here. So for example, having a line for construction in here. Reminder that you can have a point here that you can put on this line. And you can set this to be coincident with this, or pierced. And now this cut will align perfectly with this flat bottom. Because before we did that, did you see that little step? Okay. Now, the way you approach this is totally fine with a fillet. That's okay. That's great. Now, obviously, your bottle has a chamfer on it. I know I told TJ about chamfers. I'm sorry. Sometimes there's individual questions and I don't address it with the class. There is a tool here, so I mean, take the opportunity to do it now. Other than fillets, there are chamfers. A chamfer is just like a fillet, but it's a lot sharper. So let's see, you type in a smaller volume here, and now it's a hard edge. And now you can increase this until it's close. For whatever reason, I'm sorry, this didn't occur to me when we were talking, but this is way easier to do it. Does that make sense? Your approach is fine though, just fine. And it's okay that it's a fillet and not a chamfer. Now, yeah. Do you want me to get into how I initially explained you to build it? Or does this answer your question? Okay. Well, you didn't probably know about chamfer. I apologize for that. If I try to just quickly explain what I recommended you do initially, it was to revolve a lid somewhat like this. I'll make this as quick as possible. And then to revolve a cap. No, this is a different sketch. Maybe that was the confusion. I mean, it could have come from the same master, but I would have done the revolve separately. So this line is black because it's aligned with the origin. I think I advised, oops, it's not closed. I need to close this. Right, so now it gets blue, so it has a closed profile. That's how you know the shape is closed. We revolve around this. Don't uncheck merge, that's always critical. And then from a right view, cutting away part of the handle. This is to mirror it, so it's exactly in the middle. Mirror entities, features, extrude cut, through all both, because we want to go infinitely in both directions, and we only want to cut the top handle. So that's why I unchecked auto select and make sure it's just the top. And now I do this, and now I have the handle on top of this. And I think that's how I verbally described to you how to do it. I realize it's the end of class, hard to do. But now, so now you do have two separate bodies here. What the last thing you want to do, if you don't have it up here, and most of you probably don't because you have the same settings I do, you can always select two bodies, and if you right click on them and say combine, it defaults to add, and you click the checkbox, now it becomes one. You can subtract, so you can do, if I edit this combine tool, you can say subtract, you can say the main body is this one, and the bodies to subtract is this, and now this weird like triangle shape is going to be removed from this other one. But it's more often to use combine for addition than subtraction. Any other questions? Okay. Your approach to solve it though is totally fine. Yeah. Okay. All right, up next we have Sammy. Which bottle do you want to look at? Yeah, let's look at those grooves on there now, maybe. Any specific questions or just? Yeah, so cap is there a reason that you had this cut curved?
I guess because it's happening.
I just wish that that wasn't.
Yeah, I know.
Now, move body is not a bad thing to use, but it's a bit, it's a little bit abused here. Yeah. So reminder everybody again that from these extrudes, you don't have to do it from the sketch plane. You can always say offset. So you can dial in like where you want it to start and move it up. I mean, the other thing that I would also then edit, whoops, is again, is just bringing this all the way to here. And making this a straight line. Obviously more considered than what I've done here. I think this would have gotten you a little bit closer to like, I mean, yeah. You know, tweaking this so that these then are then tangent. Another way to do this one, this lid would have been, you know, if you wanted this to align perfectly, would be to have this lid just come straight out like this. And then once you have it on here, so again, here you can always extrude from a midplane, and that will have it be centered. I guess this is not an ideal solution because it doesn't go all the way. Like one way I might have treated this is like with the whatever that width of the lid is, let's say it's 1 inch. You could say, okay, extrude this 1 inch midplane like that, and then create another extrude where you copy this sketch with convert entities, delete out the lid, you know, combine these or whatever. Maybe there's an arc in between that's missing now because I deleted it away. I think I forgot a timer now on this one. We'll get this and we'll move on. And then extruding this wider to what it needs to be. So again, midplane, I believe is to 1.75 before. Again, you know, it's merging. You may want to say what you want it to merge with. Maybe it's only the cap, right? I don't know. Does that make sense? You see how I approach that? And then you can cut away at this. And now it's aligned perfectly from the top. If you want to avoid this, simply the solution there is to just make sure it way overlaps. So just drag these way down. There is a little bit of SolidWorks that's just simply understanding geometry and what happens when you do something with something. Does that make sense? If we just briefly look at what you did to get these. Sorry, go ahead. What's your question?
No, I was just saying, like, conventional these were just like, do like, extrusion, just, you know, because it's like kind of like floated, and then it's also kind of like, it's like different sizes for each, which is
Yeah. Yeah. No, your approach here is good. How did you? Oh, you did create a plane. There it is. Okay. Yeah, so Sammy created a plane here that's based on this line, put a sketch on it, and just extruded these up. For what it's worth, I realized like it's a slightly different design in your bottle. I might have just stopped it a little bit shorter or extruded the side ones shorter than the middle ones, just so you didn't get close to that edge. And then she simply just mirrored that feature from left to right. That's a perfectly acceptable approach. What I'm glad you did, I don't know if this is something we talked about or something you discovered on your own, is that you did these as full circles, because then it had a nice blend. Now that I say that though, the one thing that I don't think you did, oh you did, is merge the results. Yeah, perfect. That's good. Nice work. Okay, any other questions before we move on? Okay. Next up we have Bryce. Also, no notes for you, Bryce. Is there anything you want to look at in particular? Okay. Oh, did I open the right one? Yeah, I did. Any specific questions or?
Circle, that got a little,
This one?
yeah, that got a little bit over times. I think in my model, the half scale one, the circle got pretty small.
Okay.
And I wanted to keep them more proportionate.
Nice. Yeah, the way you have this set up looks good. Let me use Angelica's trick here. Work around to get those to snap back. I see. So you have it as an offset of this here. You have these scaled as width. Let's see, when these grow, when this grows, these stay the same. I mean, this looks well set up. What was your question? You were worried about this getting too small when you got too small?
Yeah, the half scale one, still.
Yeah, nice work.
Yeah, it just gets way too small compared to the others.
Gotcha. You know, I'll be honest, I'm having trouble seeing what's controlling these. It looks like,
What's controlling them? So those two upper circles, they are the midpoint.
oh, it's here, right. Nice.
Same with the middle one too.
I got you. Okay. Yeah, I think simply changing this then would be the manual way to change it. I can't think of a better way to get that to scale than what you have. Nice work. So yeah, again, using a midpoint is a helpful thing here. So this line, these are half circles essentially that are then tangent together. Cool. Honestly, it looks good. Again, sometimes with SOLIDWORKS, there's not a lot of quote unquote automation you can get, but yeah, going to midpoints is probably about the closest you can get to getting things to scale proportionally. Otherwise, it is all manual. And again, it's just all tied to the widest edges, which it looks like you did. Awesome. Any other questions on this? Okay. Nice work. It looks good. Good job. Next up, we have Maria. For you, I do have a comment, I think. Yeah, that was what you wanted to look at. I see that now. Sorry, go ahead. Yeah. Okay, let's look at that. All right. So yeah, you were having issues with so just right off the bat, I would say like you want to, it probably would have helped to like dimension this angle. And because that was one of the comments was like that angle changing on your designs. The other thing that I think would have been helpful to dimension would have been like this to this maybe. And now like that's dimensioned, like you could tie all of these together. What's this tied to? To this curve here. Yeah, because this is black now. I don't know what's, oh, is it this height that's fixing it? It also looks like this is aligned to this, which I probably wouldn't have done. I think better here would have been to like find this midpoint and just dimension this Let's see what this does now. Although I'm noticing this is also fixed. Oh, because of this down here. Okay, let's see what happens now when we grow this wider. Interesting, okay. So we need to tie this one, it is tied to this. What happens when this, it was popping like that? Okay. What is this tied to? Oh, okay. So this here is tied individually at the bottom. This is the same issue we talked about before where you want to tie all of these widths to like this here. So let's try it again and see what happens. Again, there is a little bit of this like trial and error. Let's just start small. So now that this whole edge is tied to the widest part, it's all moving. Obviously, this is a problem that this is moving, so I don't know what's controlling this right now. Yeah, sorry, at a glance, I don't know what's controlling this, but this should be dimensioned to the center here like this. And that way it shouldn't move. We can try deleting it and just seeing if we can fix this. What's controlling this here? Oh, it's coincident to something, maybe. So in general, like deleting things out like I'm doing is not ideal for the master because it will lead to problems down the road. But for this project, so here's a line that appears to be causing problems. So having this dimension to the center is important. And then now hopefully let's see if this, see now this moves out without this moving. Does that make sense? Yeah. Oh, because then this grew wide. I see what you're saying. Yeah, so ideally the cap should be part of your master, your initial master. Yeah, I see what you're saying. So then you need to either have some kind of blend to design it so it can get wider, or maybe the cap itself gets wide, but this neck stays the same size. I think now that makes sense to me. I understand that your cap, that alignment you wanted with your cap was kind of causing trouble. It was restricting for you from growing it. I got you. And you were following the requirements, which was to keep the cap the same. Yeah, that's an instance where you would want to find a design solution that allows the body to like transition from the cap wider. So just very briefly on the side here, what I would have done if this is your cap, whoops. Here's your cap, here's your center line. I think it would have made sense in your design to have an arc coming out from the cap like this. Or yeah, right. So that like if it's right below, it can go straight down, but if it needs to grow wider, it can like flare out like that. Does that make sense? Obviously, though, it would be a constraint when you got really narrow. Like the smallest you could get would have been straight down then. Cool. All right, moving on. Next up, we have Alex. Which bottle do you want to look at?
The Gatorade bottle, yeah.
Gatorade, okay. You mentioned a comment about the bottom.
Yeah, I think it's just arranging, but it was more about like how to keep it in the master sketch so that when you change the width or well just in general the width, the amount that is extruded cut on the bottom, it'll stay that same like amount of distance cut inward. Because I was watching your video and I saw how you did it, and as soon as I tried revolving it, it created like kind of like what happened with Joseph, which just kind of
Gotcha.
around some certain point. So I was just hoping you could like redo that right now.
Yeah.
So I can see like how they did it. Maybe it's the way I went out with master sketch. I don't know. From what I'm understanding, you could just choose that extrusion cut itself, not even the line. The extrusion cut, so like you set to a certain amount of distance when you're changing the width.
Yeah. Okay. So repeating from the video, what I did, I set a line here that was kind of like a depth guide of where you wanted that cut to be. And now I dimensioned, I have it going to the widest part, and I have it dimensioned from the widest part. So let's say we always want that cut to be 0.3 deep. Whoops. What we would then do is, now unfortunately, because your master sketch is, you couldn't also have this cut as part of the master. The cut would have to be separate.
Right.
So if I just like quickly just roll back in the tree here just so we can see, here's my line. What you would then do is you have to make your shape on this right plane. So whatever shape that ends up being, again, for most of you, if we have this be a line to mirror about here, it's this triangle. I'm going to mirror this about this, mirror entities, drag this so that it makes a closed shape. When I go to do my extrude cut, again, this tells you where it starts from. So in this instance, you would set a vertice or a vertex. Hopefully Alt-V shows me the sketches. If it doesn't, come on now. There we go. The vertex I want to choose is this, which is controlled from the depth. And I just want to shoot this out the other side. And go ahead and check that box. Now it seems like your issue was when you went to pattern this, it patterned it almost about itself. This is where you want to make sure that you pattern it about the center of the bottle. And this should work. Oh, interesting. Is this what you're having?
Yeah.
That's weird. I'll be honest, I don't know what's doing that. Let's look at this. Okay.
And so what I was about to tell you is that choosing that point, 0.3 away from the farthest width, it's almost looking like it extrudes from that point. I don't know why it's doing that. Because when I did it, what I decided to do, which I was going to tell you, I can tell you now, I just offsetted it from wherever I thought eyeballing it would look good. And then when I revolved it, it was fine. So then when I wanted to do like the bigger bottle, the double side,
you had to manually.
I just did it by eyeball. So like,
because
I don't know why it does that when you set it to, like how you set up that line in the matches.
This is so weird. It looks right to me here, right? The way it lines up. But when you click check, obviously it doesn't do what you want it to do. I do not have an answer for you. That's really weird.
So you said it from, like, and you can check right now, like, if you decided not to choose to offset it from that surface, like, say you just wanted to just offset it by eyeball, yeah, it works.
Well, I just changed it to through all, but this is so weird. It appears that this line is an issue. I don't know if... So another thing you can pick, so if you go to view here, you can hide show. One thing you can hide and show is temporary axes. So anywhere where there's like a, and I'm going to turn off sketches just temporarily. So this is, again, where you can like dial in what you see and don't see. I'm going to hide sketches. So now this is a temporary axis. I'm going to select this and see if this fixes it. If there was something weird with that line, that was a bug. Nope, it's still an issue. That's really bizarre. Did it work in my demo when I did it before? Did I actually go through this process of patterning it or no?
No, because what you ended up in the video was just how, because if you just did one extrude cut and then you changed the size,
oh, yeah. I see what's going on now. Who else did this? Did this affect anybody else? Did anyone else have trouble with this?
That's what I had to do.
You know what? I know exactly what's going on. So I apologize. I steered you wrong. Because what's happening here, you're absolutely correct. So, okay, this pattern here, it's mimicking the feature right here. It's the cut extrude feature. This cut extrude feature is designed to go from that point. So you're absolutely right. It makes all of the cuts from that point, even though it's patterning it about the center of this here.
Right. So I guess my overall question would be
Is there another way to do it automatically?
where you're scaling it all in not, I mean, I already did the way I thought.
With a subtraction? Yes, it would. I believe that would work. To the revolve. So let's look at this real quick. Yeah, I'll be honest, I didn't consider that it would all come from that same point in space. I assumed that because that cut was created, it would mimic it. For what it's worth, everybody, these linear patterns, circular patterns, they always are more robust. Your Jenga tower will always rebuild better if you're patterning a body more than a feature. I showed you all features because it's a little more simple now, and it's like less of a leap. I realize I'm spending a lot of time on this. Let me just try what Mireia suggested. I think that will work better. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do an extrusion instead here. Now, of course, I turned off all my sketches. Sorry, I'll try and get this as quick as possible. Hide temporary axes. Okay, so now we're doing a blind extrusion from here. And we want this to be long just so it works. We do not want it to merge. And now what we want to pattern here is the body. So yes, so now a body is not tied to this point in space. It's already been created. So now when we pattern this, it's an extra step because now you need to go, if it's not up here, you can search for combine. You can drag this to add it to your list, combine, subtract. Your main body is your revolve. The bodies to subtract are this. This is a much more robust way to do it because now the body will move to the extrusion. So now let's see if this works by making this wider. Whoops. Okay. Let's see what's going on here. I'm just going to delete this for now. I'm going to delete this for now. There we go. And then I'm just going to drag this out. Whoops. Okay, we're just going to leave it. Well, it's not going to work because of this massive thing. Yeah, that is a better way to do it. I didn't consider that all the features would be built from that exact point in space. So that is indeed wrong on the previous thing. Let's see. Okay, here's an instance where it is acceptable to use fix. Obviously, fix is bad. If you just want to drag a point, I'm going to fix that there. I'm going to drag this out. And then I'm going to select this and unfix it. That's one way to use fix. I mentioned if I saw an opportunity to do it, I would mention it. And now it grew wider and this moved with it. So the main difference, we're kind of in the weeds. I'm sorry if I've lost some of you now. But this body is extruded from the point. This pattern is patterning the body, not the command from the point. So because the body is here, these bodies don't care about the point anymore because it already exists. Whenever, if you want one main takeaway and you're lost and you're bored out of your mind at this point, the main takeaway is whenever you can pattern a body as opposed to a feature, do the body. It will be more successful in the long run. Okay, good questions. Unfortunately, we have to move on. Would what damage it? So, okay, so again, I showed you all a feature because it works. It's a more simple thing to do right now with our current level of knowledge of SolidWorks. As you learn more, you can do bodies. I would do it in the way that I just showed you, where it's like you create a dummy body to subtract from something, for example. What's also incredibly common with bottles, which is, again, a little bit more advanced than what you're all doing now, is in fact, it's more common to build a bottle in like an eighth or like a quarter. and then mirror it or duplicate it for something more complex. If it's something as simple as a revolve, which it was for most of you, that's what it was. But for example, that Gatorade bottle, the one we were just looking at, if I were to build that for my client or whatever, chances are I would build it, I would count the number of those grooves, those slices, and build it as an 1/8 or a 1/6 or whatever, and just dial that in and then mimic that after, and pattern it as a body. That's much more common. Does that answer your question? Okay. Next up we have Daisy. Daisy, what do you want to look at the handle of your bottle, or do you want to look at the size of your? It's up to you. Okay. Yeah, the note I had for you was revolve was giving you errors. That looks good. What's wrong here?
Well, it was, I think, in my original, I had a hard time getting to this point. So whatever this screen is where it's blue and everything is black, I could never get it to this point because I think my dimensions were on. I don't know, like my master sketch on my original separated from the line work, and I couldn't make changes. I don't know how
Gotcha. Okay, let me try and solve that as quickly as possible for you. So let's say you get to this point here. You know what, I'm in fact just going to roll this back one. I realized class is about to end and I wanted to leave time at the end. So I'm going to do this as humanly fast as I possibly can. Okay. Oh, struggle bus. Okay, let's say you have something like this. It's not blue anymore. Right, I have a double line down here. If this ever is the case for you all, whenever you go to revolve something or extrude something, remember that there is selected contours. You can always select in here and just click inside the center of what you want. That's perfectly acceptable. It's not ideal, but that is a quick workaround. Just remember that selected contours works. Okay, now, what little shape? I missed it. Oh, yeah, okay, I believe this means that there's something open or not. It's basically communicating it's not a complete shape. I'm sorry, for the sake of class, I'm happy to meet with you after you have time after if you want to go over more things. Okay, I just want to get to TJ's real quick. I'm sorry, I mismanaged time when we got into that rabbit hole before, so I apologize to you, Daisy, and TJ. TJ, is there anything you want to look at in detail? Gatorade bottle, okay. Sorry, this dream bottle, I opened the wrong one. Do you have a specific question or just in general? Okay. Yeah, it looks, so you definitely want to dimension more of this, right? You want to, like, again, the main takeaway here is the bounding box like this here. I would probably align this corner with this corner and have these widest points dimensioned to here. I'm actually surprised. I'm curious to look at your other bottles, but this looks like this would have been a challenge to change the size and get your volumes to rebuild. Okay. It looks like you did it all manually. I mean, when it all comes to fit, when push comes to shove, if that's how you got it, it's all that I could ask. But you're definitely missing a lot of dimensions. Hopefully that's clear based on everyone else's sketch that you saw.
Yeah. I would use dimension all much. Is that right, or
No, you want to. I'll be honest. I'm not familiar with dimensional. It sounds like an automated feature. It sounds like you definitely want to go step by step and do it yourself manually because you want to set it up in an intelligent way that you're able to adjust it. And typically this would have been done to the master, not to the copied sketch. Okay, I apologize to both of you. I'm happy to meet with you after class. It was just my poor time management. With the remaining 2 minutes, this will all be in an email, but I just want to show you. So on Box, there is a folder. It's a new folder. It's called, whoops, wrong one. Apologies here. Project 2. For the demo and the email, you need to go into this file here and open this up. You need to download all these files. We get into assemblies. It is a new SolidWorks file, okay? I'm sorry, I'm going to take my 2 minutes right now. You go to File, New. The video shows you this. It's an assembly. Again, it's all explained in the video, but this asks you what you want to place in here. Again, in this instance, we are using what you download, which is some of these files. You're going to place a toaster file in here, and it's basically assembling pieces to create a model. So again, the next thing you would insert, again, the video shows you all of this, would be perhaps like a knob, and it shows you how to take these and like select a surface, select another surface, and click on this paper clip that mates it, and it jumps the knob over to that part. It basically, you are assembling a toaster in SolidWorks. You have all the files given to you. It's just putting it together. The final thing it's going to show you how to do is something called a pack and go. It's under File, Pack and Go. Again, the video walks you through it. When you make that pack and go, you need to upload that. That's your homework for me to verify that you did it. The only thing in the video that's different is it refers to knobs and handles that we built in class. We're going a little out of order, so this is why I'm providing them to you. If there's anything in the video that's confusing like that, it should be in that folder. You are all free to go. If there's any questions, I'm happy to stay.